You're watching Every Day's a Saturday, USCC veteran. Let's go, baby. And here's your host, Brian. And what's going on, friends and family? Hope you guys are having an amazing day out there. 2025, it's already April. Gosh dang. Well, when this drops, it's actually going to be May already. Where is 2025 going? We're already, almost halfway through. It's crazy how fast time flies. Hey, we got some amazing, cool news. We have just recently been added to Reese Across America. So go give them a follow and you guys will be able to watch this or hear the show. Sorry about that. On their channel on Saturdays. And that will be playing at, let me see, I forgot the time. 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. There it is at the bottom. And just go check out their link. Go give them a follow. I think he said it's 80-something shows on there now. So I am very happy and delighted to be on there with a group of amazing people. I know some of my close friends from other podcasts that are on there, and excited to be a part of that. So go give them a check out. All right, let's not make our guest wait any longer. He is a former NCAA Division I basketball player, SWAT hostage negotiator, a cancer warrior, and author of a book. And I'm excited to hear all about his life experiences and what he's got going on. Let's go ahead and have Terry Tucker come on and talk all about his life. Let's go. How you doing, Terry?
I am great, Brian. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to talking with you today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time and opening up your life to the rest of us and getting ready to share some experiences. No, it's not always easy, but sometimes it's necessary so we can, get the message out there. Someone out there could be needing to hear something that you got to say, and you never know. You could save a life just by talking. You know what I mean? So it's absolutely a pleasure to have you on here, Terry. And the floor is now all yours, man. Give us a little bit of a rundown of where you grew up, what led you kind of into law enforcement, kind of talk about your career, and then when you got out and all the great things you got going on now, man.
Sure. So I really appreciate being on with you today. I am a product of the South Side of Chicago. I am the oldest of three boys. You can't tell this from looking at me or from my voice, but I'm 6'8" tall, and I actually went to college on a basketball scholarship. I've got a brother who's 6'7", who was a pitcher for the University of Notre Dame. Another brother who's 6'6", who was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers and the National Basketball Association. And then my dad was 6'5". So we used to joke that if you sat behind our family in church growing up, not a prayer's chance you were going to see anything that was going on, at the front of the church. But our 5'8" mother was the boss. I mean, didn't matter how big, tall, strong we were. Whatever mom said, that's the way it went.
I guess the church nappers sat behind you guys, though. The ones that nod off.
Exactly, they did, and of course, mom's got you guys always got to be perfect. You've got to dress perfectly, and so we were always late to church, which meant the only seats available were in the front row. And everybody was mad at us because it's like, hey, down in front, we can't see anything, kind of thing. So it was a great experience growing up. My parents taught my brothers, and I don't have any sisters, the value of family, of loving each other, of caring for each other, of supporting each other. And I think we've taken that and expressed it in our lives as we've done things. Both my brothers are in education. I was in law enforcement. So I'm lucky. I get a scholarship to college at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina, a military college, and do my 4 years and find out I'm the first person in my family to actually graduate from college. So when I graduate, I move home to find a job. Brian, I'm really going to date myself now, but this was long before the internet was available to help people find employment. Fortunately, I found my first job in the corporate headquarters of Wendy's International, the hamburger chain, in their marketing department. That was the good news. Bad news was I lived with my parents for the next 3.5 years, as I helped my mother care for my father and my grandmother, who were both dying of different forms of cancer.
Oh gosh, man.
Yeah, it was, you
Yeah,
graduate from college.
two people you had to take care of in there, huh?
Well, my parents had done so much for my brothers and I. It was like, you know what? This is a no-brainer. Absolutely,
Right.
I'm gonna
Yeah, for
be there
sure.
to help. And
Yeah.
that, and I mean, I think how it was bad for me, but I mean, my mother, in one bedroom, her husband was dying, and in the bedroom right next door to that, her mother was dying, and they
God,
died within 18 months of each other. So,
wow.
I mean, yeah, it was bad for me, but I think it was much worse for my mom having
Yeah,
to deal with that.
absolutely. My
So
gosh.
when I finished Wendy's, I actually went to work for the hospital that cared for my father and my grandmother. I thought they did such a
That's
great job.
interesting.
Wanted to be part of that. And then at 37, made a major pivot in my life and became a police officer. And part of what I did,
Wow.
yeah, I know, old to be doing that.
And here's this tall guy. They're like, you're probably the tallest cadet there, man.
Oh, I was. I mean,
By
going
no
to the police
doubt.
academy, absolutely. The tallest and almost the oldest too.
It's like
I
that
mean,
movie, The Police Academy, the big tall.
yeah,
Man.
exactly. And so, got through that, became a SWAT hostage negotiator, among other things. And then my wife lost her job. And she's always been the primary breadwinner. So I had to get out of law enforcement. And it was like, well, what do I do? Well, I've got a college degree. I had a master's degree. I spent a couple of years in law school. I was on the SWAT team. So I started a school security consulting business and worked with private independent schools around the United States, helping them on their physical security. I also coach girls high school basketball. And I guess just finally, my wife and I have been married for 32 years. We have one child, a daughter, who's a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and is an officer in the new branch of the military, the Space Force.
Wow. And you know what? It's hard to find people from the Space Force. So, we're always trying to find someone to interview. You can't find anybody yet. We're like, is there veterans?
They're
Is
all
there
out there.
veterans? Is there veterans yet of Space Force? Or, I mean, is everybody still active duty?
No, there are veterans, and I think that's kind of one of the issues that at least I have seen in the Space Force. It's kind of like pilots in the Air Force. You do all this training for these men and women to become pilots, and then they leave. They go fly for the airlines. They do all that kind of
Right.
stuff. And so the Air Force had to put in, parameters. My son-in-law is graduated with my daughter, and he's a pilot in the Air Force, and he's got a 12-year commitment. The
Yes.
Space Force
Right.
doesn't have that. So they give you all this training. People do their 4 years, and they're like, no, I'm going to go make $100,000 working for Boeing or Lockheed or something like that.
Yeah, people tend to follow the money,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, we're all in it to make, to survive. So that's one thing that the military is competing against, and that once again, that's why they do have to put those like 12-year commitments in place for some of them, so they know they can retain them for that long.
Absolutely.
That's crazy. Now, we'll go ahead and back up some. I mean, I know that was kind of like the high level of your life, so we'll go ahead and kind of back up and bring more into your childhood, because I talk a little bit more about becoming a basketball player and stuff like that. And did you just kind of lean towards basketball? I mean, obviously you have the height for it. I mean, no doubt, man. I mean, I'm sure the coaches were just like, oh, that guy. For you and your brothers, you were the tallest in the family, though, right?
Yeah, 6'8", 6'7", 6'6", and 6'5". It was all an inch apart.
That's just crazy. Yeah. Now, you and your brothers, did you guys all used to play basketball in the backyard? Or, I mean, is that kind of where you started liking? What drew you to basketball?
Well, unfortunately, when I was 13 years old, I was 6'5", and I had, yeah, I know, exactly.
You fast, man, dude.
I did, and I had a size 13 shoe, and I had these great big, I used to call them Dumbo ears. My head had not caught up.
To grow it, yeah.
And so I got teased mercilessly because of that.
Right.
And it was like basketball was something that I could do alone, that I could do by myself, that I could practice with. And my dad and my brothers and I built a small court in our backyard. We had it paved and the hoop up and everything like that. So I didn't have to deal, you can tease me all you want, but then I grew up, and I grew out and I filled out and I got a scholarship to college. So basketball was it was a natural progression based on my height And I was very fortunate at the time. We were living in Columbus, Ohio. We did a little stint there. And I just happened to get on a rec league team with the son of the assistant basketball coach at Ohio State University. And so that opened up, I went to the basketball camps in the summer, and, the more I practiced, the better I got, the more I wanted to practice. And so it was sort of once the snowball started to roll, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was something I loved, that I had a great time with. Even in college, I played against Michael Jordan when his freshman year at North Carolina, when they won the national championship. And I didn't know that was going to, Michael Jordan, he's a freshman.
Right.
And kind of a funny story. My youngest brother, who pitched for Notre Dame, he became a basketball coach and a guidance counselor in Chicago. And he coached Michael Jordan's two sons. And he kind of tells a funny story. He said, one day we're at practice and I'm teaching the players a drill, and I look up and nobody's paying attention to me. So I look where the kids are looking, and it was at the gym door. Jordan had come into the gym as a dad. I'm here to pick up my kids after school and after practice and take them home. So my brother looks at Jordan and says, "Hey, Michael, you're a little bit of a distraction. Would you mind stepping out in the hall until practice is over?" And Jordan was incredibly cool. He's like, "Yeah, sorry, coach. I didn't mean to interrupt." My brother thought later, "Gee, I'm probably the only coach in the history of basketball that ever kicked Michael Jordan out of practice."
Right. There's a lot of people out there that may not even say anything.
Right. Yeah, it's Michael Jordan,
Yeah, exactly.
But like I said, he didn't try to coach the team. He didn't try to tell my brother what to do. It's like, you're the coach. You do what you think is right. I mean, my brother's he's in the Illinois High School Hall of Fame. He's a very good coach. So, but it was great. But the other funny thing is the parents used to rotate the team meal before every game. And so when it was Jordan's time, they opened up their house, their compound, basically.
Wow.
And all the players and my brother and the parents got to come in, to Jordan's house and have their pregame meal and stuff like that. So he just has some great experiences with Jordan.
Oh, that's awesome. Were you a big Chicago Bulls fan?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, still are. Yeah.
I mean, both my brothers live in Chicago. My mother's almost 90, still lives in Chicago and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, you don't let that die. Are you Cubs fan too? Or you not?
I'm a South Sider, but I am a Cubs fan. I should be a White Sox fan, but I am a Cubs fan.
Yeah, they just got the Dodgers. It was a little depressing. So,
well, I think the Cubs just swept the Dodgers, but I won't say anything.
Yeah, we won't talk about that. Yeah, it was good games though. Good games, I will say.
Absolutely, a lot of runs scored. Yes.
Both good games. Yes, it was very interesting. One of those good games to watch.
Exactly.
So yeah, man. And then, when you were in college and stuff, now, did you start gravitating to an interest in what you wanted to do? Did you have your mindset and kind of what you wanted to start doing?
I did. And you look at my resume and it kind of looks like a Super Ball went off in the room, I mean, it's kind of all over the place, but there is a backstory. And the backstory is this, that my paternal grandfather, my dad's dad, was a Chicago police officer from 1924 to 1954. And in 1933, he was shot in the line of duty with his own gun. It was not a serious injury. He was shot in the ankle. But my dad, who was an infant at the time, always remembered the stories growing up that my grandmother told of that knock on the door of Mrs. Tucker, grab your son, come with us, your husband's been shot. I mean, Brian, let's face it, trauma medicine in 1933 was a lot different than trauma medicine is in 2025.
Sure.
So when I expressed an interest in sort of following in my grandfather's footsteps, my dad was absolutely not. You're going to college, you're going to major in business, you're going to get out, get a great job, get married, have 2.4 kids, and live happily ever after. But that's the life my father wanted me to lead. That's not the life I felt I was supposed to lead. So I had a choice. As I mentioned, when I graduated from college, my father was dying of cancer. I could have said, "Hey, Dad, I'm sorry, I know you're dying of cancer, but I'm going to go do my own thing." Or out of love and respect for you, I will do what you want me to do. So understanding that backstory, my first two jobs were in business because that's what my dad wanted. And I started joke, Brian, I did what every good son did. I waited until my father passed away and I followed my own dreams. And I will say this, one of the things I'm most proud of in my life is that I never let my dream die. I could have
Yeah, no
said, hey,
kidding.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I knew I was going to be a cop. I didn't know when it was going to be. And let's face it, 37 is pretty old to be getting into that
It
line of
really
work.
is, man. And in a lot of ways, like, I mean, your body sometimes isn't as, as good as the younger ones. And then you got to also listen to the younger ones talking crap about you being the
Yeah.
old one, right? I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know I took a whole lot more Tylenol in the police academy than my counterparts did.
You're like, man, Jerry, you're smelling like Bengay, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it was something that I was passionate about because I knew it was something I was supposed to do. And I hope my dad, he passed away, obviously, but I hope he's proud of what I did when I was in law enforcement, because it was something I couldn't wait to get up, in the morning. Well, I worked the night shift, so get up in the middle of the afternoon and go do, because I love doing it. It's a great job.
Now, how did you end up in the hostage negotiation side of things? Did you start off as a police officer and kind of work your way into that? Now, kind of give us your transition of how you kind of got yourself into there.
Sure. So yeah, I graduate from the police academy. I go to a district. I'm in a marked car in uniform, running a beat. And fortunately, Cincinnati, which is where I was a police officer in Cincinnati, Ohio. Cincinnati usually runs single person cars, but some of the areas that are really bad, they run double cars.
That seems like a pretty big city too. Like, I mean, for Chicago, right? Yeah. And
yeah. I mean, Cincinnati, it's not as big as Chicago, but it's a big city, and so we had, I got in with actually one of my classmates, and she and I were a double car. I was fortunate that my training officer in Cincinnati had just come out of the drug unit. So when he was training me, we did a lot of drug work, a lot of guns and things like that. So when my partner and I had this, we were running we did a lot of gun work, drug work, warrants and things like that. We were very active. And there became an open, and you're going to laugh at this. I know you're going to laugh at this. There became an opening in the drug unit. And I became an undercover narcotics officer at 6'8".
Wow. Yeah.
I knew you'd laugh at that. Right?
Yeah, you're going to stand out like a sore thumb, man.
Right? The funny thing about it is I never changed my appearance. I never grew my hair long. I never grew, facial hair or anything like that.
You have to, yeah.
Because what motivates people in that industry, and illicit drugs is an industry, whether you believe that or not.
For sure.
Yeah. Is money, is greed. So it doesn't matter what you look like. If you got $20 and you want to buy a rock of crack, you'll find somebody to sell it to you. And we were a street level unit. I mean, we did occasionally work with the DEA and the FBI and things like that. But for the most part, we were just trying to take dealers off the street. That's really what we were doing. And sometimes those cases blew up and they got bigger and things like that. So we brought the feds in, which I always thought was interesting. So I'll just give you a quick example. So for me, if I got a gun off of a person, number one, the gun, I actually had to physically have the gun. And two, the gun had to work. So you had to test fire the gun to make sure it worked. For the feds, to charge somebody, like if they were up on a wiretap with somebody and the person mentioned the word gun, I'm going to go get my gun. You should get your gun. Every mention of the word gun was a federal gun charge. They never had to find the gun. They never had to have the gun. The gun never even had to work. And so we loved working with the feds because
that's wild.
It was great. I mean, that's why you get these guys with 25 count indictments, because they said gun 15 times. 15 of those indictments are a gun charge.
Gosh, damn. That's wild.
It was pretty. It was a lot of fun. So did that, but then, I mean, Brian, you know this. You were in the Marine Corps. I mean, you were a badass. Pardon my French, but it's SWAT is usually the best officers with the best training and the best equipment. Sure. And I've always wanted to be part of the best in my life. So it was when there was an opening as a negotiator, I put in for it. And I had to do the 1.5 mile run, the push-ups, the sit-ups, the meet with the psychologist, take psychological exams, and then meet with the team. And it was an all or nothing. If one person on the team said, hey, I've worked with Terry before, he's hard to work with, or he's a difficult person, you didn't get on. Wow. And so I was lucky to get the thumbs up from everybody. And
like a panel they go through, huh, to get you on?
Yeah, I started a 4.5-year odyssey through doing this, and I loved it. I mean, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of stress, but I worked with good people and had great training.
Yeah, I gotta imagine the negotiating side of things is kind of hard now. Is it like what we see kind of on the movie type thing, or you guys, yeah, it's way out, way different.
It is. I mean, there was, I think Samuel L. Jackson made a movie back in the 1990s called The Negotiator, and it
Right,
portrayed
right.
him,
Yes.
yeah, as
Yes.
some kind of Superman guy that he did everything. And
Yeah.
it doesn't work that way. I
It's
mean,
Hollywooded up, no doubt.
yeah. Well, you only got 2 hours, so you got to, make it, condense it all into one.
Sure.
So the way it worked, it was a team approach. So when there was a call up, we would come out as a team. And we had enough people that not everybody had to come out. And so the way it worked was, yes, you had a primary that was talking to the barricaded person or whoever the person ended up being. But sitting right next to you is another negotiator listening to everything that's happening, not saying anything, but listening to everything.
Just mean the ears, yeah.
Yeah. And then you've got 3 or 4, maybe even 5 of the rest of the team, kind of what I used to call working the crowd. Brian, a lot of times we would get on scene and be like, why are we here? I have no
Yeah.
idea what happened. What's going on? Why did this
Right.
person do what they do? So you might get a note from the person sitting next to you, your secondary, that says, don't talk about his mother, because the team found out that he had a huge fight with his mom and he grabbed the gun and barricaded himself in his bedroom. Oh, okay, that helps. So it was much more of a collegial, much more of a team approach to doing this than it was you were just the guy talking to the person. So
Now, it was in your cases, was it always, because he's a hostage negotiator, but was it more or less if a person was in distress and maybe um, getting ready to jump off a bridge type thing, or had a gun to their head? Is that also the same type of negotiation thing you would have to do, not just in a hostage negotiation situation, but more of a help the individual out?
yes, I mean, we would go on. Somebody had got a tip that this guy wanted for homicide was holed up in his girlfriend's apartment, and here's the address. And so we'd surround the apartment building and try to talk the guy out. So it was that. Yeah, it was people that were suicidal. I had a guy one time, and this probably started, I don't know, around dinner time. This guy wanted to commit suicide, and so he slit his wrists, and that didn't work. And then he had the brilliant idea of turning the gas on in his oven and sticking his head in the oven, and thought that was going to kill him. Well, that didn't work either.
Oh my
And
gosh, dude.
yeah, so
He's
this is
just making himself sick, probably.
exactly. It's like, that's not going to work. So he called a relative, and the relative was smart enough to call us. And so it's probably 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning now, and he's in his apartment and he's got a gun. And we were talking, and finally he said, Terry, I'm really tired. I just want to come out. I said, do that. Put the gun down, take the phone with you. And I told him what was going to happen when he got outside, that he was going to put on the ground, all that stuff. And I said, and then I'll come down to the scene and we'll talk man to man. We'll talk face to face. And he said, yeah, I'd really like that. But he ended up hanging up the phone, which isn't uncommon because we're conditioned when a call is over to hang up the phone. About 30 seconds later, one of the tactical team guys that was surrounding the apartment said, hey, we heard a gunshot. And I thought, you didn't. He did. Brian, he shot himself in the head. But we think it was a hesitation, because it was kind of like, it wasn't like this. It was like, bang. And it's so funny. It's not funny, but it really was kind of funny. The bullet went in underneath his temple, like right underneath the skin of his temple, went around his skull and came out the other side. Never penetrated his skull, never got to his brain. Now, we always hear about when it's your time, it's your time.
Right.
That was a classic example of when it's not your time, there's nothing you can do. I mean, think about it. This guy tried 3 different times to kill himself, and it was God's way of saying, no, not your time yet. You stay there.
My gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
Would you consider that as one of your most memorable times being on? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was going to be my next question is what was your most memorable time? I'm sure
Well,
that one right there is pretty crazy. I'm sure you have tons, man, right?
I'll give you another one. If this is
sure. Yeah.
So this is kind of funny and totally atypical. Never went this way. Usually they were hours long. But I was working. I was a sergeant in District 1, and there was a call up in District 2, and I was in a marked car in a uniform. So I got to the scene fairly quickly, and I'm talking to the uniform guys, and I'm like, what's the deal? He's drunk. He barricaded himself in his house. He's got a gun, and he's got his wife as a hostage. I'm like, okay. Do you have him on the phone? Yes, we do. Okay, let me talk to him. So we start talking. And about 10 minutes in, Brian, and I just had a feeling with this guy. Like I say, this never went this way. You're not talking about solutions usually until 3 or 4 or 5 hours into this.
Right.
And I said to him, what would it take for you to let your wife go and for you to come out safely? And there was this long pause. And he said, give me a beer. And I said, if I gave you a beer, do I have your word that you would let your wife go and you would come out peacefully? He said, do I have your word I could drink it? I said, yes, you absolutely have my word you could drink it. Will you let your wife go? Absolutely. So I gave $5 to one of the officers. I said, go down to the store, buy a beer.
Did he ask for a specific kind of beer?
No, he didn't.
No, he just wanted a beer, man. He just
any beer. So the tactical team put it on the front porch, and I called them back. And I said, hey, your beer is on the front porch, but you don't get it until your wife comes out and you come out peacefully. And he hit me up again. Do I have your word I can drink it? I said, absolutely. You have my word you can drink the beer. Well, we wanted to control the situation. So we would tie off doors, like so people couldn't get out. We didn't want just opening the door and coming out guns blazing. So, I talked to the tactical team. They unlocked the door. Here comes his wife, hands up, no problem. Here he comes, hands up, no problem. He gets handcuffed. We let him drink his beer, and off to jail he went. So that was kind of a funny story.
Hey, sometimes I guess you got to do what you got to do, right, man?
Exactly.
I mean,
right.
What's the harm of one little beer? At least no one got harmed at the end of the day,
exactly.
So I guess that your kind of job, really, you got to do what you got to do to get it done. Now, do you have like a standoff that really stands out to you because it was the longest standoff you ever had with negotiation? What was your longest standoff?
Yeah, we had one that lasted about 10 hours. And the funny thing about it was we were negotiating with nobody. This was a business, and it was a business that made these giant coils of wire. And so the middle of the coil, you could literally, get up in and sit in it, lay down in it and stuff like that. That's how big these things were. And there were some theft. There was some theft going on. And the district had a sort of undercover team that was kind of working the night shift because these guys were breaking in at night. Well, they broke into this company. And by the time we got there, because we were not a full-time SWAT team, so we had, and I'm really going to date myself again, Brian, we had pagers that would go off, and we would be told where to go. And so by the time we got there, got situated, suited up, and ready to go, it could be an hour. But these guys swore that they had the scene contained. So they had a business, a building, and then they had this huge yard with all these coils of wire that was, I don't know, probably 60, 70 yards long. And the reason it took so long is we're trying to get these guys to talk to us. But what we found out that in reality, they had slipped away. They'd gotten out. And by the time the tactical team went into the building and searched every bale of wire in that probably 60 or 70 yard bin, it was 10 hours. So we were negotiating with nobody for 10 hours.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta love that one, right?
Yeah,
it's a drill.
Paid, so, okay.
Hey, man, it's a drill. Yeah, I mean, I imagine there's plenty of times you've had to tell the wife, hey, I'm not gonna make it home exactly on time tonight. Got another negotiation going on here. It's gonna be a couple hours.
Well, it's funny because my wife will tell you this story. I mean, she supported me, through getting into law enforcement and SWAT and everything else I did. But Sunday nights was kind of family night. And she would always make a really nice meal. And, my wife and daughter and I would sit down to that meal. And Brian, almost inevitably, the pager would go off, and she would look at me like, really? Are you kidding me? I made this great meal. We're sitting down to eat. And I would look at her like, I got to go. Sorry, but I couldn't have done it. I wouldn't have had as much fun. I wouldn't have been successful had my family not been there to support me along the way. And I think that's true. I'm sure that's true of people in the military, law enforcement, first responders, whatever. I mean, if you have a good family foundation, it's a whole lot easier to do that job.
Absolutely. And it's actually hard sometimes to find that good family that stays by your side and lives with the fact that you got to deploy or you can't make it home on time and you might have an extended hours. I mean, not everybody can handle that. Right. So it does take good support systems and a great family dynamic to kind of make that work. Because in the law enforcement world, the divorce rate's super high. Same in the veteran world, the divorce rate's outrageous because people can't handle those kind of things. But all right, we're about at the halfway point, so we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, we'll find out why you were ready to call it, and we'll talk about what you got going on today. We'll talk about how you have had to experience cancer yourself now in your own life, and the struggles you've been through with that, and how you've been able to mitigate with all that, and the book you've written, all that great stuff. So we'll be right back after a couple messages.
Welcome to Sick Call with Doc, a podcast dedicated to eradicating veteran suicide. With 22 veterans lost every day, we believe that's 22 too many. Join us as we bring you inspiring stories, heartfelt conversations, and a community that cares. Because no matter what, you are not alone. We were there for you then, and we're here for you now. Follow, like, and share our mission. Together we can make a difference. Inspiring hope, saving lives.
American made, veteran owned, we are Doc Goodbeard. It's more than just looking good. When it comes to your beard, we believe you can have it all. Thoughtfully designed, unique fragrances, and affordable prices. We strive to provide a line of uniquely scented balms and oils that you won't find in other products. Come on, rock with Doc, and remember, it's all about the beard, man. So what do you say? Let's take that average beard and make it badass. Go to docbeard.com.
All right, and we're back. All right, Terry. So we'll go ahead and talk about, what made you decide to go ahead and get on out and how was that transition for you, after, I'm sure, going through negotiations, all that stuff, leaving, your job. I'm sure you guys go through something as well, just like, veterans do. So we'd love to hear all about that. And floor's all yours again, man.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I got into law enforcement with the support of my family, with the support of my wife. My wife had married me, and I was a suit and tie, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, hospital administrator. And I'm like, hey, hon, I want to give all that up and work nights and get shot at. And, all the
yeah, that had to be a hard sell, man. A little bit of a hard sell.
Well, we went to dinner one night and we ordered a bottle of wine. So it was a little bit easier, with the porn and that. So, but she supported me in doing that. And as I mentioned, she was the primary, always has been the primary breadwinner in our family. And so when she lost her job in Cincinnati, she couldn't find another one. So we ended up having to move to Houston, Texas. And so it was, what am I going to do now? I loved this job. It was my purpose, but now I'm not doing it. So it was, there was what am I going to do? How's this going to work? I'd never started a business before in my life, but I had all this SWAT training. I had a master's degree. I had been to law school for a couple of years. I'm like, I'm pretty good at writing. How do I mix this? Put it in the blender and mix it up and say, okay, this is going to be what I'm. And so I started a school security consulting business, and I ended up working with private independent schools around the United States to basically assess their physical security, write their policies and procedures, and train their staff. And so it was literally going to schools in Houston and saying, look, I will do a pro bono, a freebie for you. If you like it, would you please say that you enjoyed this and this was something beneficial to other school administrators and that's how I started it. And it was, in a way, it was good because I could also, I mentioned my daughter went to the Air Force Academy. Well, unfortunately or fortunately, she got my height. She went to the academy to play basketball, and she did her freshman year until she blew out her knee. But I got to coach her in high school. So having your own business. Yeah.
How tall is she?
6'3".
Oh, she's tall.
Yeah. And it's funny because her husband's like 5'9".
Oh, dang. Okay. Yeah.
Tall, thin. He's short and squatty. He's kind of a wrestler. I figure their kids are going to be NFL linemen at something like that.
Yeah, right. Usually with a tall mom, the kids end up being pretty tall as well. So we'll see.
Exactly.
Well, that didn't end up working in your favor though, right? Because your mom's 5'8", you said?
5'8". Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
sheesh.
Yeah. So it's just, I didn't want to leave law enforcement, but like I said, being a cop wasn't who I was. It's what I did. What I was a father and a husband. And that was so much more important to me
Right.
than what I did for a living, even though I felt it was my purpose. And so, like I said, when I had to give it up, it wasn't easy. I mean, I wasn't happy about it, but it was something that for our
And how many
family.
years has this been? Like maybe 6 years or so, or
10.
10? Oh, you went to complete 10. That's right. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did 10 years. So I didn't get my pension. I didn't get it.
Oh, you weren't vested in after 10 years?
Vested. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
None of that.
Wow.
So, but it was for me the right thing to do. It was, my family came first. I always say what's gotten me through life is faith, family, and friends, my 3 F's. So
Absolutely. Love that. Now, what made you, inspired you to like get into, writing a book and then let's talk about how you found out you got cancer and that had to be some hard news to kind of take effort. I mean, here you lived with your, 2 cancer patients and watched them struggle. So now here you are. And also, I mean, it had to be a little bit scary too, because it obviously is running in the family. You got it on, well, it's on both sides. So I'm sure your kids are extremely, I'm worried about it as well. But let's talk about your cancer journey and stuff.
Sure. So 2012, I'm a girls' high school basketball coach in Texas, and I have a callus break open on the bottom of my left foot, right below my third toe. And Brian, initially I didn't think much of it because as a coach, you're on your feet a lot.
Sure.
But after a few weeks of it not healing, I made an appointment and went to see a podiatrist, a foot doctor friend of mine. And he takes an x-ray and he says, Terry, I think you have a little cyst in there and I can cut it out. And he does. And he shows it to me. It's just a little gelatin sac with some white fat in it. No dark spots, no blood, nothing that gave either one of us concern. But fortunately or unfortunately, he sent it off to pathology to have it looked at. And then 2 weeks later, I get the call from him. And as I said, he's a friend of mine. And the more difficulty he's having explaining to me what's going on, honestly, the more frightened I was becoming. And so finally, he just laid it out for me. He said, Terry, I've been a doctor for 25 years, and I have never seen the form of cancer that you have. You have an incredibly rare form of melanoma. And most people think of melanoma as too much exposure to the sun, affects the melanin, the pigment in our skin. Mine has nothing to do with sun exposure. It's just a rare form of melanoma that appears on the bottom of the feet, which is where mine appeared, or the palms of the hands. And he said, because your cancer is so uncommon, you need to go to MD Anderson Cancer Center and be treated. And so I was. They excised the bottom of my foot, basically cut it out and took out all the lymph nodes in my groin. And then they said to me, you'll probably be dead in 2 years. We have nothing to offer you. There's no treatment. There's no medicines. There's only surgery. If it's somewhere we can cut it out, we'll cut it out. Otherwise, get your affairs in order. So I thought, well, you gave me a death sentence. How can I turn that or try to turn that death sentence into a life sentence? And so my doctor put me on a drug called interferon. I took a weekly interferon injection. And the side effects of the interferon were that I had terrible flu-like symptoms for 2 to 3 days every week.
Oh, gosh.
After each
I would struggle. Yeah.
Yeah, terrible. And I took those weekly injections for almost 5 years. So imagine having the flu every week for 5 years.
Did you and your body never, it just was never got used to that?
No. I mean, honestly, Brian, I was so sick of being sick. I prayed to die. It was
you were ready to stop.
It was, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I mean, I lost 50 pounds during that interferon therapy. I used to joke that I was skinny enough that I was pretty sure I could go hang gliding on a Dorito, with that. I mean, my ability to taste food diminished. Oh. I mean, it was 5 years of hell. And the bad part of it was it wasn't a cure. As my doctor used to say, Terry, this is only kicking the can down the road. That's all we're doing. This isn't going to cure you. And eventually the interferon became so toxic to my body that I ended up in the intensive care unit at the hospital with a body temperature of 108 degrees, which is usually not compatible with being alive. And so I had to stop the interferon, and almost immediately the cancer came back on the bottom of my foot in the exact same spot it had started 5 years ago. And that was 2018. I necessitated the amputation of my left foot. Cancer worked its way up my leg in 2019, 2 more surgeries when I had tumors in my shin. And then in 2020, in the middle of the COVID pandemic, I had a tumor that grew large enough, kind of in my ankle area, that grew large enough that it broke my leg. It fractured my tibia.
Wow.
And I found out my entire lower leg was full of cancer. So in the middle of the COVID pandemic, I had to have my left leg amputated above the knee. And I also found out I have tumors in my lungs, which I still have. I still have tumors in my lungs. I'm treated for those every 6 weeks at the hospital. So this has been a recurring journey. It's been 13 years now of literally trying to die and not doing a very good job of it.
Oh my gosh, man. That is one hell of a battle. Wow. That's crazy. And so what do you do now for the ones in the lungs? You got to go to is it radiation, or is it no?
No, it's actually I've been on a clinical trial medication. So that basically means I can use it, but it's not FDA approved.
It's not ready. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a standard of care. And the interesting thing about this drug is it does nothing to the cancer. But what it does is, and the way cancer proliferates in your body is it secretes an enzyme or a protein that hides it from your immune system. And what this drug does is go in and wipe out that protein or that enzyme so that my own immune system, just like if you or I were to get a cold or a flu, your body would say, hey, that doesn't belong here. We need to attack that. My body for the last over 4 years now has been keeping the cancer, as my doctor says, stable. Basically in check.
Just keep it at bay. Yeah.
It's not getting any bigger.
Garden it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I've just been doing that. And now I have a very bad reaction to the medicine when I get it. And I have to go to the hospital for an entire week and be treated Monday through Friday. And I shake, I throw up. It's kind of ugly, but it's working. So I'm not messing with it.
Wow, man. That's crazy. So you've been doing this since 2012, and right. when it came back under your foot, was it kind of the same thing, or did you feel like a pain down there initially, or just opened up as another wound?
Yeah, like exactly. It just opened up again, and I'm like, really? 5 years of that interferon therapy, and bang, it's right back as soon as I stopped it, and it's like, okay, I've never been in remission. I've never not been treated or, having a surgery, recovering from a surgery or an amputation or whatever. So.
Gosh. So you definitely go to the doctors often.
Yeah. I should have a wing at the hospital named after me.
They pretty much know you there, I'm sure. You're a big guy too. So now, since you've had to have your leg amputated now, did you get yourself a prosthetic, or have you been able to adjust to that? Because being tall, I imagine that's got to be a challenge in more ways than one, because my cousin also has his leg amputated due to diabetes, but I know it's a struggle, man. I mean, wearing and infections and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, I do have a prosthetic leg. I have a ridiculously amazing prosthetic leg. It's like being the bionic man. The leg has a gyroscope in the calf, so it knows whether you're kind of over it, in front of it, or behind it. And it has a microprocessor in the knee.
It's got its own little brain then, huh? Shoot.
It does. You plug it in. You plug it in at night.
Okay.
Honestly, Brian, I rarely use it. I wore it to walk my daughter down the aisle. That was my big. I wanted to do that. I worked with a physical therapist real hard. But here's the problem. And I'm going to sound like a baby when I say this, but so everybody thinks you just put this thing on and you go.
Yeah.
But you don't.
No, right.
You put on like this rubberish membrane. It's like a wetsuit that's about 1/4 of an inch thick. You put that on first, and then you put on what they call socks. And they're just big, think of giant sweat socks. And you put them on so that you put enough of them on so that your stump fits in, to the portal that where your leg goes, because you don't want it to move. As you said, it can rub, you can get blisters, you can get infections, you can get all that. So you've got to do that. But as you go through the day, moving shrinks your stump. So you have to find a place, take off your pants, take off your prosthetic, put on more socks, put your stump or put your prosthetic back on, and then go about your day. And this could happen 2 or 3 times a day. And the other interesting thing, and I used to do when I would go to the physical therapist, I would literally come home, get into the bathtub, and take off that liner because the liner doesn't breathe. And it was just filled with sweat. And so you just dump it out in the bathtub.
Wow.
And so it's not like you just put it on and go. It is very labor intensive, very time consuming. And honestly,
a lot of work, huh? Yeah. I guess you got to be, one of those days, like if you want to be going through all that extra stuff, I guess it's easier not to.
I just use my wheelchair. Yeah. It's just easier for me to ride around in a wheelchair.
Yeah. I get that. Yeah, I guess, a lot of us out there take a lot of things for granted, right? And that'd be one of them, just being able to have the ability to walk to and from certain places without so much, problems. We're going to go ahead and switch it up just a little bit since we're kind of, we got about 14 more minutes before we got to head out of here. But let's talk about your book, and what inspired you to write your book. Let's talk about what your book talks about, where people can find it, all that great stuff. So let's go ahead and focus on that now.
Sure. So never wanted to write a book, never expected to write a book. There's kind of an old joke that says when we talk to God, it's called prayer. When God talks to us, it's called schizophrenia. So God never said, hey, Terry, write a book. But honestly, Brian, what I think God did was put enough people in my path that started to make the same suggestion over and you should write a book. You should write a book. You should write a book. And so I thought, okay, I'll write this book. And Sustainable Excellence, and it's on the screen now, 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life, was really a book born out of 2 conversations I had. One was with a former player that I coached in high school. As I mentioned, I coached girls high school basketball, who had moved to the area in Colorado with her fiance, where my wife and I live. And the 4 of us had dinner one night. And I remember saying to her after dinner that I'm really excited that you're living close and I could watch you find and live your purpose. And Brian, she got real quiet for a while. And then she looked at me and she said, well, Coach, what do you think my purpose is? I said, I have absolutely no idea what your purpose is, but that's what your life should be about. Finding the reason you were put on the face of this earth. And there is a reason. You do your unique gifts and talents and living that reason. So that was one conversation. And then I had a young man in college reach out to me on social media. And he said, what do you think are the most important things that I should learn, not to just be successful in my job or in business, but to be successful in life? And I didn't want to give him the, get up early, work hard, help others. I didn't want to give him sort of the cliches that we already know.
Sure.
So I took some time and I was writing some notes and kind of came up with these 10 thoughts, these 10 ideas, these 10 principles. And so I sent them to him. And then I stepped back and I was like, okay, I got a life story that fits underneath this principle, or I know somebody whose life emulates that principle. So literally during the 4 to 5 month period where I was healing after I had my leg amputated, I sat down at the computer every day and I built stories, and they're real stories about real people underneath each of the principles. And that's how Sustainable Excellence came to be.
Wow, that's awesome. Now, if someone wanted to go get your book, where are all the different places that they can go get your book?
Yeah,
where's the best place?
Probably the easiest place is Amazon.
Okay.
You can go to my website and it'll give you the link to go to Amazon. But it's at Barnes & Noble. It's at Apple iBooks. It's pretty much anywhere you can get a book online. You can get Sustainable Excellence.
Awesome, man. Now, do you have any future plans? Are you going to be writing any more books? What's the future look like for Terry?
So in the end of 2023, I was asked to write the final chapter in a cancer book, which I did. And actually, I'm literally in the process now. I've written a second book called 4 Truths and a Lie that I'm hoping to have out sometime in fourth quarter of 2025. I'm working with a publisher and an editor and all that right now. And so that's next on the agenda. And then I also speak when I have the opportunity. I mean, I do a lot of virtual speaking, but if I can get out, it's kind of hard for me to travel, but within the, Colorado and the contiguous states, I like to get out and talk with people. So that's kind of what I do when I'm not in treatment.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Terry, I really appreciate you coming on, man, and taking the time to, talk about all the things you got going on. And I wish you nothing but the best with your cancer journey, man. And definitely will be sending my prayers your way. I know that's, a lot to deal with and still continue to do other things, man. And, I imagine sometimes it's really hard to put your focus on other things because the focus is so overwhelmed by, what you got going on with your body.
I mean, you need to find meaning in your misery. I don't think we suffer in vain. You find meaning in your misery, you learn from that, and you move forward.
Yeah, and you can either sit there and let the misery overtake your life, or have control over the misery a little bit, and have some meaningful. It looks like you're really taking your lemons and making lemonade out of them, so to speak. And I can appreciate that. And keep doing what you're doing out there, Terry, man. We do need a lot more, men and women out there that are leaders that want to get out there and talk about things that are really hard to talk about, and giving people solutions to their problems, and we need so much more of that in our world. And like I said, thank you so much once again for coming on. Is there any last things you want to say before you go?
Let me leave you with this quote. It's from a book called Farewell to Arms, which I love to read. And, sitting in a wheelchair, you have plenty of time to do that. Written by Ernest Hemingway. And there's a line in that book that I absolutely love. And it kind of goes to what you were just saying. And the line is this: life breaks everyone, and afterward, many are stronger at the broken places. So when you get beat down by life, and we all do, realize that if you keep moving forward, you'll probably come out of that incident much more able to handle adversity, much stronger, much more willing to go forward in your life. So remember that. And Brian, I really enjoyed being on with you today, and I hope our conversation adds value to your audience. So thank you.
Absolutely. I thank you so much. And absolutely, it's going to add some value. Everybody out there, if you can, please go give his website a check out, www.motivationalcheck.com. And, go pick up one of his books, give him some support, and we wish you all the best. And thank you so much for your service to your community and to everybody else. And thank you again, Terry.
Thank you.
We'll see you. All right, friends and family. Well, that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for another great one. And I thank you guys so much for continuously listening to the show, sharing it out. Please don't forget to keep on watching, like it. Let's get all these stories out there. If you guys need to get in touch with me, you can always email me every day is a Saturday, 365@yahoo.com. If you want to be a part of the show, you got a great story. You think that someone else can, learn from your story, love to hear from you. Don't have to necessarily be, someone who went out and fought war or, went and did something extreme. We really want to talk to all our first responders, veterans, active duty, people out there that are really, doing some great things. And this community needs some help with, from each other. So hope you guys are having an amazing day. You know how we say on the show, don't let this day kick your ass. Make sure you're out there kicking it. Till you guys. Till next time. I need to get out of here, I guess.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.